Ms. Cooray is also an independent non-executive director of Commercial Bank of Ceylon PLC and also independent non-executive director of Allianz Insurance Lanka Limited and Allianz Life Insurance Lanka Limited. So with this introduction, let's now welcome on stage our panelist, Ms. Shiromal Cooray. Dr. Samitha Perera is director, CEO at CBL Foods International. He has a PhD from the Management Science University of Malaysia and holds an MBA from the University of Lincolnshire and Humberside, UK, along with many other postgraduate qualifications in different fields. So with that introduction, let's now welcome our panelist on stage, Dr. Samitha Perera. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen. Our next panelist is Mr. Chevaan Daniel. He's Executive Group Director at Capital Maharaja Group. We'd like to invite Mr. Chevaan to please join us. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Chevaan Daniel. Dr. Nalin Jayasuriya was a former regional HR consultant and regional head of special projects of a Fortune 500 company, SmithKline Beecham International, Southeast Asia and India, operating from the Singapore regional office and Jakarta, Indonesia, overseeing HR and special projects in 9 countries. With this introduction, it's now my pleasure to hand over proceedings to our moderator for the panel discussion. Put your hands together for Dr. Nalin Jayasuriya.
And I would like to first start with referring to Bingu. How would they face the consequences of right sizing? Because it affects people. Particularly, it affects people who will be identified as less productive and to be grouped together has become victims of the right sizing. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, first thing is, I think when you do a right sizing, you should not look at people, you should look at the role. The biggest mistake we do is when you do right sizing, we say, oh, these are a bunch of low performers, let's fire them using this opportunity. First, we'll transfer them to this area, then we'll exit this unit completely in 6 months. So that is wrong. So it should be the role, not the person. Second thing is you have to be reasonable in terms of what you pay. So you should, in a market like Sri Lanka, because our salaries are very low, like a junior executive salary in these countries is like 100, 150,000. So even if you pay 3 years salary, it's not enough for you to sustain if you don't have a job for 12 months. So it's important that you negotiate better with your boards on a restructuring pot. And that restructuring pot, you have to keep it separately and amortize. So there are ways of doing those things. So that has to be sorted first. So it can't be like a mass layoff and just pay 3 months salary or 6 months. I don't think a formula is 15 months, I think. So it doesn't work. And also, it's important to get the buy-in from the larger organization, not the management. Management will always say, it sounds good. But getting the buy-in from the larger organization would be critical. Because then only you can manage. Now, it's easier said than done. Samitha has managed multinational with unions. Not easy. When you have unions going against you, it's not easy. But right sizing has to happen. First of all, it's a big question in terms of why did you build this big entourage? So you're responsible. I think leadership should take responsibility if you have built a huge army of people like the government, 1.7 million, right? So leadership has to take responsibility. The second part is, you have to do it methodically and treat people with respect in the process.
Thank you. I would like to direct a question at Samitha. He has his unique combination of fitting into the cap of a CEO and having worn the raincoat of HR for so many years. My question to you, Samitha, is now how would you go about creating a culture, not only among the top management, but across the company, of making people feel that they're the greatest asset?
Firstly, thanks for inviting here, and also thanks for the question, Nalin. I would say, when you talk about this culture, there are a lot of misconception on the culture itself, what we really need to build up. And organizations sometimes think culture is at keeping people happy and then creating the right environment. And you give a definition of culture is a part of your values and beliefs and stories and policies, leadership and all will come to culture. It's right, in terms of definition is right. But when it comes to the real practical world, and in this VUCA world, how do you get your culture, inculcate culture, it's a challenge if you really don't understand what it's exactly that you want to do. So I'll bring a concept, actually, it reminds me, once the Professor Thomperon was talking about culture, he defined the culture as an onion. Yeah, he said culture has a core value, and you have the layers of culture build up for the organization. So when you're looking at it, in most of the organization, they really create the peripherals. They really do the initiatives for the peripherals, right? You are thinking you are taking people for excursion, and you are taking them for a outing, or like get them together for another event, and recognizing them for a good work done, and you think that's culture, but it's not the case. And culture has a different meaning for your business strategy. And we have heard it's a good company, but that company has closed down. Yeah, and it's a lovely company. They have looked after us and they have kept us going. But finally, that company has bankrupt, right? So what is exactly right mix, right? I'll bring that concept of the Tom Saran's concept. So what he was talking about is like, you need to have a core values of the business, core cultural value of the business. So you need to bring that as a base for the organization. And when you recognize, do you recognize culture as a factor of that, you support your business strategy while you're keeping what people are happy on that? Or do you really understand your recognition is leading to your consumer satisfaction, or like getting your competitive advantage of the market that you are in is going well. And so we have to bring down the whole concept into a one framework. And then I can give a good example, like I think Mr. Amarasuri is here. The 90s we were talking about Singer as a family company. Yeah, and so that has built the organization around that, core value on that. I can remember every manager that would be recruited, senior management recruited, we had to go for a dinner with him. And that's a build-up that we at home with his family, right? So building up the culture and which really enabling your strategy to execute. And whereas that your people will be happy, the environment is created, those are given things. And as Bingu was talking about, and those are given things that you can't really deprive people, or like you can't have an organization where that your value creation is not being distributed among your key stakeholders. Yeah. So when you inculcate a culture, so it's important that you build up a culture where that you build the core values of the business. You can't run with the peripherals now. No longer today that people will appreciate, look here, they have taken us for a drink, or they have taken us for a party, right? They have recognized with the idea. Those are all becoming, those need to happen in the business, but you need to give a meaning for that. You have to give a meaning, and then beyond that, you will create a sustainable organization for the future. And I can bring another ideology like Simon Sinek was talking about. Do you have an organization where that your mindset is, whether it's as a finite or your mindset is infinite? Very powerful ideology. When you do something, do you really build the organization with the infinite mindset? Or do you do activities with a finite mindset? Like, you're like a project, do it and finish it off. You give an award and finish it off. And it's not going to work. This today is kind of a very challenging environment. You've got to look after people, you look after your business and the consumer. And all three facets need to create value.
Yeah, it's interesting, Samitha. You took the whole thing and bundled it up together, and you said, you ended up with the conclusion of, it's a fine balance, how do we do it? Now, I have a thought, I'm going to check that thought with Chevaan. That thought is coming out of your topic that you just handled. In my mind, I don't believe that people are the greatest assets in an organization. Sometimes they are reliability. What I believe is the undeveloped potential of the people is the greatest asset. Any thoughts on that, Chevaan?
Underdeveloped.
The greatest asset, as I see, is the undeveloped potential of the people, not the people itself.
Yeah, it's one of the same almost in a sense. I think it's quite important to have the right people on the bus. It doesn't matter where you want to take that bus. I think the focus on getting the right people is, I think all of the panelists have spoken about the importance of finding the right people. And I think spending an inordinate amount of time looking for the right people, and once you find them, taking care of them is incredibly important. But I think spending time with people and making sure that they're the right fit to the kind of organization that you're running, and also the kind of objectives and goals that you want to achieve are critically important, because every industry is different. The company that I run is quite different to the company that Bingu runs. And so the kind of people that I would look for are very different. We're speaking about the pandemic. The reporters that work for me had to be at work. There was no staying at home. They had to be at work 24/7 almost, so that everybody else could stay at home, because they had to report on the news, they had to keep everybody informed, and that information had to be disseminated amongst all of you, and that had to be done by a group of people who are at work. And unless you had a very particular type of person who was almost an activist at heart, someone who felt that this role or job was much bigger than him or herself, you can't really achieve that kind of objective. So once you have found that kind of person, then taking care of that person is incredibly important. And hopefully I get the opportunity to speak about a really, really important part of nurturing people in this day and age as the panel progresses. But as far as the media industry is concerned, looking for those very, very special people who have a purpose that goes beyond themselves, I think is important. And then all you need to do is provide them with a platform and freedom, and they reach their potential.
Thank you, Shivaan. Next is to you, Shiromal. For example, let's pick your organization, your own organization. What would you expect your people to do to be identified and recognized that they are important, they come first before numbers, that the management sees them as the reason why the business is working this way, where they feel that they come first, and they don't take that for granted, but they can feel it by the conditions of work, the working environment, and the relationship and the openness that the management displays and exercises with the people. So what are your thoughts on that, Shiromal?
Yeah, I think you answered the question as well by explaining it. So it is correct. I think getting the people, and first it is important to get them aligned with your goals and your, as Chevaan said, the purpose is very important to people now. So the purpose and therefore the culture of the organization. So it's very important to get that alignment. And that doesn't happen just because you give them various incentives or salaries and stuff like that. It's an exercise. So HR has to be quite involved in that, because they have to be trained. They have to be your company goals and your culture and your values need to be communicated to the people so that they believe in it and they kind of internalize it. And that makes it easier for them to follow the rules and regulations and practices or whatever you have, because otherwise there's going to be a disalignment. It's also important, in my opinion, to have a regular feedback. So the people, it could be a survey, but I think the kind of evaluations we had once a year is not relevant anymore. I mean, they have to be constant feedbacks. So feedbacks need to be honest. People also must be honest whether they want to say negative things or positive things. So we must have a culture where they are free to say what they want to say, that they don't feel they're going to be penalized if they say something negative about the company, because then there is no thing about people first. So the feedback has to be listened to and addressed, so that people feel that actually our voice matters, that we are being recognized, we are being heard, and there is some action that is being taken depending on what we say. There's also, of course, the usual, the motivation. They need to be recognized whenever they do something right. It is not only sometimes we have the habit of just pulling out all the mistakes that people make. but there are also very good positive things they make. So we need to celebrate them. We need to recognize people for doing all of that. And and the leaders must also make sure that they actually walk the talk, basically. It's not right to say people come first, and people have to be empowered. They need to have the flexibility and the freedom to do things little within their own teams, maybe, and to create those little moments of excellence, so that you do give them a lot of leeway, a lot of, you have to empower them so that they have the flexibility and the independence to do things that are positive and which will help increase the bottom line, obviously, of the company.
Thank you, Shiromal. My next question is directed to Chevaan, but I would like the tail end to be picked up by Bingu and take it to end. It's something like a relay, but a baton between two people, passing the baton, right? So he will start it, and would like to see you how you conclude that. My question to you is, today, a CEO, particularly with a finance background, will look at the numbers. At the end of the day, business success is decided by numbers. Now, in that situation, combined with a situation where there is an economic decline, mingled with factors that go beyond our control, how would you describe your approach to have a people-first type of system, a culture in your organization?
Well, I think I probably touched on it in my earlier answer when I said that it's very, very important. Once you have found the right people to work for you, and once you have clearly defined a shared purpose, then I don't think you need to unnecessarily or extraordinarily articulate a people-first culture. I think it becomes pretty apparent to everybody that they are first, and that the actions and their contribution is incredibly valued and also valuable to a cause that is greater than themselves and also greater than their own, and than the company, in fact. I'll just give you one quick example, for example. Amidst all of this chaos, from a personal perspective, it's been a really wonderful experience to see how young Sri Lankans have been battling through all of their personal challenges, but also contributing so much. For example, the news reporters who work for News First. We have several hundred young people across the country. They're the same news reporters who also lead the Gammad initiative, which is enormous. It is enormous now. And they don't get anything for it. They don't get much recognition. But they do it with such passion and such vision as well, that it is today such a loved and admired, and it's today a movement, really. It's much beyond even the way it started. And so this is all possible because you allow people to understand that they are empowered, and then you give them an environment in which their ideas are respected and that they are not fearful of failure. And then, trying to articulate a people's first culture with just these corporate campaigns is completely unnecessary. So pass the relay to Bingu.
Right. Now, your answer is quite relevant in a situation of normalcy. This is what most companies would do.
It was not normal at all. I mean, we went through this whole thing when everything was abnormal. So it's I think, relevant in any circumstance.
Yeah. Now, when selecting the right people, Chevaan,
Yeah.
What do you mean by right?
People who understand and share your vision, I think.
How would you know that?
You've got to spend a lot of time
at the point
with
of recruitment.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to spend a whole lot of time at that point of recruitment. I think that is the key, because that is where the trajectory of your relationship with that person takes off. So that is a key. You can't get it right all the time, obviously.
Right.
But we try to.
Right.
Now, in the way we look at it is like, again, I told you I've been in the emerging markets for 160 years. We see these things have cycles, right? Some are short, some are long. Now, this is for Sri Lanka, sadly, slightly longer cycle. We had the pandemic and the economic crisis. We are still going through the default. A lot of people think we are out of the woods. We are not. So, but if you really look at the money we have made in the last, we've been here for 130 plus years. We've made a lot of money. We repaid a lot of dividends. So if you take cost action just to, a couple of years of stress, it's a bad outcome. Even from profitability standpoint, that year you might go down on profits, but in 2 years' time, we might recover in 1 year, at least to get back to 2019, 17, 18 levels. I mean, you lose out because you lost your people. So it's a very short-sighted thing to, take cost action in a banking business. I mean, there are other businesses I've seen, Google and all these, the tech companies cutting down, looking at the US recession because there are a lot of pressure coming their way. They'll react differently. Again, it also depends on your investors. Investors ask for cost action in some of the industries. Investors say for the next 3 years is a complete write-off. These 3-4 segments will not work. They will never bounce back. So cut your staff by 30%. So we don't have that problem, at least in the banking sector. In the retail, a little bit, they look for cost action in retail. But again, we are very lean. That's why it comes back to being lean. So if you are lean, you can manage a situation like that. If you are not lean, probably this is the time to think about how do we right size, at least after the crisis is over, because you can't go on like that. But taking a short-term view and taking cost action is absolutely a bad outcome if you're taking a bet on the long term. And as leaders, it's important you constantly project the future. You constantly visualize the future. You have 5, 6 scenario plannings. This happens, we'll do this, X, Y, Z, not one plan. You know exactly what to do when these changes happen. IMF came well and good in March. Debt restructuring can happen in June, can happen in September, can go down to November. Right? So then different scenarios, how do you react to that? So being lean will really help you, but you jump the gun and take costs. Some people are trigger happy. Some people love to do it and show you, you've done this. Some people think it's leadership. It's not leadership. You're not taking a view on the future.
Next, I'm just going to give a scenario, and I would like each one of you to come up with your own perceptions of the scenario. Now, as baby boomers, as what they did, they felt they have to make the world, after the Second World War, and we have to put things right, and they took on a lot of responsibility. They didn't look for time, didn't look at the clock. They wanted to do the right thing, finish a job, take responsibility. Now we have come to the Z generation. Now, these guys are smart. They want shortcuts, they want quick gains, they want career movements, they want more money, but loyalty is something else. I was walking through a company in the finance division, and there was a small post-it note on his computer. It said, I want money. If you want loyalty, get a dog. Mm-hmm. So this is typical Z generation thinking. Now, how would a fading baby boomers generation of managers transit out of their business life, ensuring there's a bright future for the rest to follow, having Z generation taking over? I open it to all 4 of you.
Yeah, can I take?
No, you can.
No, I think we created that generation. We are responsible, first of all, because this is an entitled group, because we provided everything to them. Unlike when we were raised during the 70s and the 80s, like we had to find our stuff, we took the public transportation, whereas after 2000, our per capita also went up in 2008, and I'm talking about Sri Lanka now. Globally, I think there was a massive middle class being created, and kids were pampered. And they got exposed to technology, knowledge, etc. So they're different. We need to understand that. But one thing that I would disagree is in terms of loyalty, they're not loyal to bosses, but they work for a purpose. So that way, they're better community than us. We work for a boss, right? We never looked at the salary. We work for the boss. We moved with the boss to another company. I've done that once. That's why I moved from Ceylon to Pramukh with Rohan Perera. That bank crashed. So we were like that. They don't do that. They don't work for bosses. So there's a good side of the Gen Zs and the Gen X, I mean the millennials and the Gen Zs, the way I see. If you activate them, they'll work for you for a long time. There's no problem. But they want to see career progression. They want to see, am I adding value? They're not interested in small titles. That's why I said this hierarchical process that we have, it worked in the 90s up to probably 2015. It doesn't work anymore. They're not interested. That's why they go to British High Commission, get the visa, go on and study. We send them, they work and study, go to Australia and all these places. They don't mind doing whatever as long as their personal space is respected. And they're doing something ethical. And that's also very important. Gen Zs don't do ethical business, unethical businesses. They challenge the management. They ask, are you paying taxes? Are you selling unwanted things? Are you looking after your supply chain? Are you paying your people properly? So these are questions, huge challenges for the leadership from our generation. So I think we should look at it positively because we have no choice anyway. They're getting bigger and bigger, and we are smaller and smaller. So that's the harsh reality.
Yeah, adding to Bingu's stuff, I think whether we like it or not, these kids have been grown up in the technology, right? Less human interactions and all on the technology platforms, and they respect that. They respect that their space. They are working together on a common platforms, right? But the question is, when you're running a business, you need the human interaction. Yeah. You need that, right? I mean, you don't like to hear automated, caller saying, "Look, you go to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4." Like, you would like to have a human voice on there, right? So business need human interactions, right? So whatever business. So the challenge comes in how you're going to transform or how you're going to get them used with their values to run our businesses. And so that need to be patiently handled. And as Bingu was rightly saying, you can't push them. You can't really push them to come and say, "Look, you got to do this." And obviously they will say, "Look here, all hands off, I'll move out," right? But get ethical. So these are the challenges I think we are getting in, and good thing to have, like diversified generation, bringing new thinking into the platform, but yet having a challenge of human interaction. So that's the core.
Yeah. So shall I?
Yeah.
So as Bingu said, we create the baby boomers created them. So I'm sure they can handle them as well. So I think they all can continue explain what the Gen Z is looking for. One of the things that I have seen is that there's a lot of anxiety in these people. There's kind of depressed. They get depressed pretty easily. So I think as the senior people, you were saying, they need to also see how to handle them, because I think they were protected by their parents and they were sheltered within very, very different situation. As you said, they didn't go by bus. We made sure that they had a vehicle to go. There was somebody to take care of them. So that situation is not there when they come out into the job market. And they do get a little disoriented and kind of lost. So I think as senior people, it is very important for HR to make sure that that aspect is also taken care of. Because lots of companies I know do have therapists, and they are constantly being used up, especially by the younger people, because they cannot handle the pressures simply because we have protected them. So I think that's quite important in handling them. And if I may add, to just inform Bingu, all companies didn't make money in the pandemic, Bingu.
No, tourism.
So there are
exceptions,
Yeah.
Tourism probably is an exception.
Yes. And then plus...
That's world over, but the rest of the 200, I think...
Yeah, and so we've been going through crisis after crisis. I think during the war, during every circumstance. So there was no way you can plan things. Even right now, you cannot plan for anything. We just live day to day. But you survive. You create different kinds of skill sets. Your people, we've right-sized, we've downsized, we've done everything possible. But as you say, a point comes when you look for, first it's the survival of the organization that you have to look after. And then, of course, the people do come. So it's a joy.
So taking a cue from what you said, Shiromal, we should also try to understand them, go down to that level, and if they're talking of 50 Cent, we must know that he's Jackson. Or if he's talking of Beyonce, we should be able to say at least a song that Beyonce sings. Then immediately we get acceptance to an open heart. Because then they begin to appreciate, hey, this guy can become part of our gang. Then you build an inroad into that. Just before Chevaan answers that, just to share with you, my eldest granddaughter, who is now 12, when she was 6 years old, and she came, they generally visit us on the weekends, and I asked, what did you learn in school on Friday? Said, we learned about a fox trying to get some grapes, and it was sour, and it said it was sour and went away. And then she asked me, Sia, have you learned that? I said, when I was small, I learned that too. But then she, at 6 years, asked me, Sia, do foxes eat grapes? For the first time in my life, somebody challenged the theory that I believed all along. And it took only a 6-year-old girl to challenge that. So this is what who grow up and will enter the organizations of tomorrow. And unless we adapt to that type of thinking and challenging, we will find it very difficult to merge the two.
But if you go to one of their parties with the techno music, you're not going to survive.
Chevaan, anything to add on your side to this Z generation?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, I think we have to be a little careful. There's something rather ominous that I think we should be aware of, in a sense. I think Shiromal alluded to the fact that there's lots of increasing mental challenges and depression, and we're all seeing that amongst young people. Not only amongst young people, but even amongst us, our own selves. And I think one of the reasons is there's this sustained assault on our focus and our attention. It's quite a pandemic, to be honest with you. For example, what we were able to do, hold our attention and hold our focus to achieve really important things, is today being completely stolen from us by these devices that we've surrounded ourselves with. I was reading this really interesting statistic. A recent study suggests that on average, office workers would check their emails 77 times a day, and they would switch tasks 400 times in a given day. So when you say switch tasks, what it essentially means is you're doing one thing, you're doing another thing, another thing, another thing. So one of the most popular words amongst prospective job users and seekers is multitasking. But if you really think about it, the human mind can only handle one thought at a time. So while you think you're multitasking, what you're actually doing is you're juggling things, and you're not really focusing your attention on one single thing at any time. So if somebody comes and tells me I'm a good multitasker, I immediately, my shutters go up, because I don't want multitaskers. I want someone who's able to focus their attention with a disciplined mind for a long period of time to achieve something. And increasingly, what's happening is the devices that we are so programmed to use are systemically making use of human psychology to almost evolve human beings in a way that they want and not how we want to progress. So what I mean is, for example, how many times do we upload something on Facebook and go and check how many people have liked it or how many people have, loved it or whatever? It's perhaps not amongst this room, but amongst young people, it's what they live for. And it's a very quick dopamine hit that makes them feel elated and happy. And then it disappears almost immediately. And then in the long term, they feel depleted, and they feel, if they don't get 1,000 likes, they feel like that's the end of the world. Young people come to me and they tell me, I don't know why I didn't get over 150 likes for this photograph of mine. I mean, but it's very serious, because they've now been, Facebook and Instagram and all of these social media platforms have assaulted their senses, captured them, and now they basically control them. So it's systemic, and we expect a therapist at work or somebody that they can speak to help them fight this enormous mammoth that is a social media company. It's almost like trying to drink water from a fire hose. There's just so much of information that's thrown at us. It's not humanly possible to consume so much of information and be normal about it. When I was young, it was the newspaper and maybe 1 or 2 television channels. Today, it's social media, it's multiple television channels. You hear of something that happens in South America almost instantaneously. You can watch it live streaming. And so your senses are constantly on alert. And it doesn't give you the time that you need to be disciplined, to achieve the great things that human beings are meant to achieve. So I think as a responsible room of CEOs, I think it's something that we really have to think about.
I think that's a point worth giving much thought to. And in an era where digital transformation is taking place rapidly with robotics, how do you feel about the sustainability of people-first culture in organizations? Maybe Chevaan? Are you just okay? Maybe.
See, now the latest thing is ChatGPT. I think those channels can really help you understand people better. It's just that you're becoming lean and lean and lean because, I mean, especially in the banking sector, we can see a lot of these jobs are now taken by the machines. So that we have to accept. So then you should have a growth mindset to grow beyond your boundaries. Should you go to another market and expand without trying to fire people and, become small? So we don't see a major challenge in terms of these new technologies, but completely agree with Chevaan about this whole social media thing and the anxiety and the depression around it. But technology is never a challenge. It is a huge, especially for the banking industry, it's a huge benefit. We are closely monitoring ChatGPT now. We believe that the world will change with that. So then we have to immediately, adjust and, make sure that we work with those technologies to, grab market share.
So could it mean that we will move from managing time and task into managing leisure?
Sorry?
High digitalization? Could it mean that we will have to move from managing time and tasks into managing leisure?
Yeah, time and task definitely is now obsolete actually. Yeah.
But the tasks may be different, right? Because technology enables you to get a lot of data, and with data analytics, so it's the whole scenario changes, I think. The space we worked in is changing now. Earlier we had a lot of data, but we couldn't make use of it. So now technology gives that. Analytics helps us to analyze, and human beings can make a lot of decisions, based on that, and enhance services, maybe make time a little more productive, tasks more efficient. So I think we need to look at how we can...
One more thing I would like to add is just one point, Samitha. I mean, always in the high-end segments, as Shiro answered, high-end hotels chain as well as the next level, you need human intervention. So all these technologies are obsolete when it comes to leisure, the high-end offering banking, affluent banking, services. I mean, when I go to Singapore, you have this online, the machines to check in and all this horrible experience when you check into a hotel, right? So you go to Sri Lankan hotel, the welcome is very different. India is also same. So I think there'll be still space for people to perform and work, but a lot of the monotonous work will get automated.
Definitely, from the manufacturing point of view, as you know, talking about services, see, a lot of prediction can be made. That's where we're moving on, and you have a lot of data in your AI system, which you can really predict what's exactly going to be in a way that it's making the human or people much easier to do things and much productive and creative, and you don't need to wait till things happen now today. And even manufacturing, if you're looking at it, I mean, if you're a production manager, that you can predict your next production plan by wastage, and so it's a given scenario that is making his life easy. But you need the human intervention, but you need to use that data. Somebody need to be there to use that data and make a creative solution for that. So I think it's a myth that if you look at technologies, it's not going to overtake the human. I mean, finally, that somebody has to make a decision. You don't have entire gamut of data for us to make a scenario. So you need to have another scenario to think. Therefore, the human intervention is inevitable.
So I think the time is now opportune to open the floor for questions from the audience. And I think Krishna is going to help us out on this. Question time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome you to please address your questions to our panelists.
We were talking about this human interaction, the need of human interaction in the industry, right? So that is true. What I really hear is true today. If I walk into a restaurant, I'm comfortable talking to an attendant and asking for it, right? If you take my kids, they prefer ordering on the menu. Because this is changing. I'm just throwing up an idea, is this the reality? It is today, yes. There are the generation that is dominating today, it's our generation, probably. The common person, if you take it today, who are doing business with you, they are looking for the human interaction. But the generation that is coming up tomorrow, is it really true? Are they really looking for human interaction?
But I think they're also talking about community, right? If I'm just briefly to say, Gen Z, they say they like community, which is why lots of companies give them free meals so they can sit together and eat. I agree with you. They'd rather not talk to, everything is online. They haven't seen their friends sometimes. But I think when they go out into the world, they do need this little bubbles of people. This is what I've read and seen also happen, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
They're very young still. So at that stage, I've also seen my kids, when they go, they prefer to use the iPad and order and all of that. But we don't know how they will respond when they're at the age of 35. Now, another thing Gen Zs are doing, they're not buying cars or houses. Because they don't believe in getting married early. At the age of 35, a family, will you live without a house? So we still don't know how they respond to that question. I still believe when you come to a certain level in your social stature, you will prefer to, comfort you, and you will like a little bit of, being pampered.
So, but this generation has made, in a given conditions, and they have built up like that. I mean, that's it. But even the business point of view, yes, that you have a no-man supermarkets, you have no-man cars that you're talking about, there will be. But you need that interaction somewhere down the line for you to really convert idea into a no-man vehicle, right? And then, so interaction will create different platforms, which I think businesses are evolving on that platform due to various efficiencies or probably your cost of your operations. You like to really bring that technology into your business and make less complex, less high efficient, and make sure that your customers are getting satisfied. So there are solutions. There are solutions in the whole business activities. You have less no human interactions. But in a larger context, even the Gen Z or even the businesses need that human interaction. You can't really take that out yet, because in a data world, like you can't really put every scenarios into a mindset and predict. You can't. And especially these kind of changing the world, the business are taking place. Robo can't really take decisions. I mean, he has not gone through previously on these scenarios. So therefore, that human interaction is needed. But how are you going to use that for your competitive advantage to get your business up is a call of your industry.
But I have a problem with people leaving, no doubt about it. What we also try to do is when they come up with this moving psyche, we try and plant them in London and Singapore and Australia and in our group offices. That's the first thing we do. We tell them, don't migrate, go work, come back. So Dubai is another place that people go to, but Middle East have kind of come down. But the real question is, can you increase salaries and keep people? You can't, right? Because they're going for lifestyle, they're going for living standards, not quality of life, living standards. They're going for all of that. So I think it's important to show them the future. So that's what we constantly do. We constantly give them the scenarios saying after IMF, after this, after that, interest rates will come down to at least to 15% by early next year, then to a single digit at some point. You will have the life back, right? And we also try to get scenarios where colleagues have gone, but some of our colleagues are actually struggling in UK. Some people went to UK 6 months ago during Aragale. They are now really struggling. Everything has gone. People who went to Australia, especially if you leave after 40, it's a problem. We also try to get those case studies and share with our colleagues and say, don't jump. But youngsters are going because the biggest problem is they are leaving the country. They're leaving. They are not sure about their future. So we have that challenge, no doubt about it, but we are constantly hiring.
Now, the core values, what we talk about. Now, I also have 2 sons who are 16 and 18 years old. Bingu was telling that when your boss went to the other bank, you also joined him. Even I have done the same thing in my path. Isn't it the leadership qualities we hold as CEOs or whatever keeping the Gen Z or whatever the technology or anything aside, we were look forward to our leaders, and they had those core values, and they had the empathy, and they kept aside the ego, and they lifted up when we were down. So it's not the matter of getting work done, but keeping the relationship going. Isn't it? We have to look at that again. I'm just throwing a question, even Shiromal and anyone, Samitha, very well. So you can ask, I feel that. So in our organizations, we want to, like the fashions come in a circle, we want to say that core values and all that, because even my son will tell, oh, these brands, Aston Martin or whatever, Tati, why don't you get a good job and earn more money? But I have the core values to say, no, I want to take this company forward and the challenges to be faced. So those guys might not look at that way.
So when I moved only once like that. And I've also always worked for certain bosses and there was loyalty being built. But at that time, we were not looking at the other side of the boss, whether he's ethical as a human being, whether he's driving the right behavior, are we doing the right things? I don't have to tell you about what Pramukha did, right? Crashed. Right? So things are not that great. But I like the structure at that time, so I moved with him because I seen the aggression, the way you drive things. Youngsters are not like that. They would like to understand the core culture of the organization. Does it work for me? Not the boss. And the purpose. What do you do end of the day? Where is your money going? So I think that's a very fair assessment. I like the Gen Zs for that. We were blind, completely blind. We were running like mad.
Yeah. Can I add something? Like, I can't see you, but you were taking on. See, classic example is a Corona, right? And when Corona got into the organization, of course, it's a people issue, like, and it's not a market issue, it's a people issue. People can't really move on, safety and all these things. But how we have handled it, what matters there, right? So yes, that you need to be safe, but you don't need to reject people, like, and you work with them for the last 10 years, and you have this issue, and you treat them like a totally alien, and treat he or she, and people will feel it, right? And we think, look here, you only communication matters now in the leadership, of course, the sincerity, how you look after, and an animal talks to each other, like your expressions, the feelings, you all transfer. So I think you're spot on, like whatever generation, you need to have that feeling factor in looking after people. And you don't need to have money for that, right? You recognize him, work with him, and treat him, care him, like, these are things that as leader you can do that. And I think they bring many examples, but I think most of the organizations also have done, we also have done many things in that kind of scenario. It's leader.
How can Sri Lanka gain from that? What are the opportunities in that brain drain?
So one thing is not having this view about the future of Sri Lanka, so they're going because of that. But there is also a group of kids, Gen Zs. I met those guys, some of those guys, they work here for $1 salary. They work from home. They got dollar contracts. Money goes to Singapore and all of that. So there are those opportunities also in this scenario because the costs have gone up in those markets. Still, if you get a couple of $1,000 sitting in Sri Lanka, it's a better life than going to Australia for $60,000, $100,000 annual salary, because at $100,000 you pay 48% tax. You get slightly over $50,000 and then you have to do a part-time and make more money, otherwise you can't pay the mortgage. So I think we still have opportunities in Sri Lanka. We don't have to run. But this time people are going. This happened in 89, this happened in 83. This happened in 2006-07 before the war ended. Then after 9, people started coming in. So these are cycles. I tell people generally, if you're really tired with the country and you're tired with your family, then you go, right? Otherwise, just stay put, go for exposure and come back, because this is home.
So the advantage is, as you said, exposure and come back. Most of them come back. And so then they get wide exposure, some experience, and they have. In tourism, we find them coming back all the time. So it's good. You get chefs who are exposed to other food items and all of that. So it can be positive as well.
I think, Janaka, Sri Lanka need to now move into a sort of a policy, even the organizations, let people do dual jobs. And it's happening in Singapore, like you see about 40% of people are doing a dual job. Like, they use their time for a more productive income to be created. So we wait as, look here, inflation, high cost of living and, moving away, will create a further chaos for individuals. I know that a few guys who are very senior and moving in to do the PhDs, they just want to register and then they want to go there. But if you really put yourself in a manner like, the opportunities what we have here, and you can create value there. I mean, so organizations also need to now think a little bit beyond that, because you can't really take entire the cost of that, the living for organization, then you will crash yourself. But organization need to change in a way that how we're going to get our people to really expel their creativity in a way that probably not maybe competitive or not competitive, right? Maybe not competitive, and then let them to really earn money. And
but sometimes BS.
Your question was, what are the merits and demerits of this migration, right? As I see it, one of the benefits could be when they go out and they earn big dollar salaries, they will be transferring money to their families here. So we are earning dollars indirectly, not through government, but indirectly, number one. Number two, when these people migrate out, the companies are forced to give opportunities for people who would have not got those opportunities had they remained. So there's fast-tracking training, development, even reaching out to rural areas, getting and growing your own timber. So there's less unlearning when you join at that level to an organization. So those are some benefits that can be offered to society.
Just to add on the Indian experience, the BOP crisis happened in the early 90s, and the Tambrams left India in the 40s after they got independence. They also get into the valley and set up the business. They all came back because they were issued a OCI pass, Overseas Citizen of India pass. Everybody got it. No voting rights, you can't buy agricultural land, but you can come back and stay. Now we are a bit difficult when it comes to dual citizenship. Now we have opened it again. We don't welcome our diaspora. That's the reality. So otherwise, there's a huge opportunity. There are well-established people in Australia, Canada, UK. You can bring them back. Even among the professionals I've seen when you try to hire those people back, there's not enough support. In the education sector, people came to work free of charge in the universities from Cambridge and all these places. Our UGC said, no, we don't have stuff. I don't need help. So we are not open-minded. India had to open up because they didn't have a choice, early 90s. It's a good case study.
Thank you very much for your very informative, illuminating discourse, and also bringing in your experiences also to play. That's very useful. And apart from that, responding to the questions from the House. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you also very much for being with us all this time and taking an active role in listening and asking questions. And I think that is the way to go.
Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're now almost drawing close to the end. But before we wrap up, it's time for us to say thank you to everybody who has been involved behind the success of our forum this evening. So to now deliver the vote of thanks, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in inviting Miss Davina Kern. Put your hands together for her, ladies and gentlemen.
It is my honor and privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on this occasion. With a break of almost 3 years due to a global pandemic, and a triple crisis that prevailed in the country, we had the privilege of meeting on a professional setup this evening. The Strategic Committee on HR Professional as a leading strategic partner, chaired by the Vice President CIPM, Mr. Priyantha Ranasinghe, and the team, felt it was time that we gathered the professional leadership, our country's CEOs, over an evening discussion on a timely topic that we believe would be an opportunity to rebuild knowledge share and to make it a forum of networking. Our keynote speaker, Mr. Bingumal, thank you for your provoking address and giving insights. I'm sure we gathered so many things, and especially not forgetting the tax part of it. Dr. Samitha, Ms. Shiromal, Mr. Chevaan, it was an excellent to hear your views on the topics. The people-first culture inspired by CEOs, coming from different industries with your viewpoints, that is definitely value addition and a lot to take from, as people need to be motivated and inspired to deliver results. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Nalin, who has been a pillar of strength in the committee, for his contribution to the industry as an eminent trainer, who have also moderated many CEOs forums in the past. I take this opportunity to thank the President CIPM, Mr. Ken Vijaykumar, Vice President and Committee Chairman, Mr. Priyantha Ranasinghe, and all my dear council members. My heartiest thanks goes to Mr. Chris Obesekara, CEO CIPM, Ms. Himali Dasanayaka, Director Operations, and the CIPM staff who worked tirelessly to make this event a success. I would also like to thank all the past presidents and the members of CIPM who have joined us this evening.